God is so good. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. How many Bibles do we have in here today? Ooh, that's looking good. That's well, you left yours in the car.
Share.
Hallelujah. You know, this week I had the opportunity to walk through a place of ministry, and I felt such heaviness in the atmosphere. It was even kind of dark. And all around were stockpiles of food. I mentioned this earlier. Survival water kits, survival lamps, survival generators, survival. And if that's the way people want to believe, that's their privilege. But when I accepted Jesus Christ, I accepted Him as Lord. Not the world system, but Jesus as Lord. And He promised me, if I would be obedient to His word, that I would never be without again. That includes the end times. We are in the end of the end times. I mean, we're right on that. If it were a clock about to strike 12, that hand would be just right there. And by that I mean the end of the church age.
Amen.
And Jesus is coming for a church that is without spot and without wrinkle. So if you're without spot, in other words, you're not walking in sin. You're not one day got your foot in heaven and the next day in hell. He's coming for a church that's pure and holy, and that rules out fear of the future.
Amen.
Or dread of the future, or anxiety of the future.
Amen.
And His word says, now this is not part of my sermon, but I am impressed of the Lord to share this right now. Because if you listen to everything on television and believe everything, you're going to get really confused.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's why you need to have your own personal relationship with the Lord and not living on somebody else's faith.
Amen.
And you need to be fastened into a church and following the doctrine of that church, not mixing it all up.
Amen.
Now you can choose and do whatever you want to, but I'm just giving you some godly advice. I've been in this ministry for a long time, and I've watched lots of people who started out a good walk with God to fall by the wayside and get mixed up in some false doctrine and stuff that just took them clear out of any faith that they once had. So Jesus is coming for a church at the end of the day that the Father says, rise and go get my children. Jesus is going to stand on that cloud, the trumpet's going to sound, and those who are in the graves are going to come out. The spirit bodies of those who've already gone on to heaven are coming down to be joined with those bodies coming out of the grave. And in an instant, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, our bodies, those who are remaining on this earth, are going to be changed with those who came out of the grave, and we're going to rise to meet Him in the air. And for 7 years, we're going to be in heaven, and there's not going to be birthday parties and all that, you know, families getting remarried and reunited. We're all going to be one in heaven. And who needs a birthday party in heaven? You're not going to. Age is ended.
That's right.
We get the craziest ideas about heaven and the life of heaven. But anyway, while we're in heaven, celebrating the wedding of the Lamb and the wedding's dinner and the Bema judgment, where we will be judged not whether we're going to get to stay in heaven or not, but we're going to be judged on our works.
Amen.
And some of the things that we do, some people call themselves into the ministry when God didn't do it at all. And those works, if it's not what God has called you to do, it's going to be burned up like wood, hay, and stubble. But you're still a believer, you're still there, you're not going to get kicked out of heaven. But we will receive rewards. There's a soul winner's reward. There are crowns that we'll be winning. And then before we come back to earth with Jesus, we're going to cast our crowns at His feet.
Amen.
Hallelujah. What's going to be going on earth while we're there? All those who miss the rapture, some of them are going to say, oh my God, my pastor was right. I wish I'd listened. I wish I hadn't been piddling around with sin. I wish I'd gotten my life straightened out. I wish I'd dedicated and been steadfast in my faith. And finally, making up their minds that they're not going to give up Jesus, even in that horrible thing that's going on this earth.
That's right.
They'll be martyred. They'll be martyred, and they'll go to heaven. Those who say, well, gee, look what God's done now. I'm not going to have anything to do with God. Well, eventually they'll lose their lives. But for 7 years, hell is going to be on this earth. Now, just this week, the stock market had a big crash. The prophets have been saying that. The prophets have been saying just before Jesus calls the church out, the financial situations, the Babylonian system of this world is going to fall. And also, I heard where North Korea is threatening South Korea,
Yes.
because they think South Korea is going to attack them. Jesus said there will be wars and rumors of wars. Well, it's increasing. And besides that, in Revelation it talks about the armies of the north coming down on Israel. Well, about the time they all gather and come down on Israel, guess what? Jesus and the church and all the saints are coming back. And with the word of His mouth, He's going to destroy all His enemies. Hallelujah. And He's going to set up His throne in Israel, in Jerusalem, and He's going to rule. And guess what? At that time, there will be one world religion and one world government. And guess who's going to be king of the government? Jesus. And who's going to be the high priest of the church? Jesus. Hallelujah. Now, just to set the record straight, if Jesus provided the food for the ravens at the brook for Elijah, and we're under the New Testament, which is a better covenant, if we have need of food, and He's already done that for me many times, multiplied my food. He's multiplied a cornmeal in an empty cornmeal container, and I know that I'm not going to get under the spirit of fear to try to prepare for the tribulation, because I am not tribulating. Now, you can make your own mind up, but you won't hear that preached here. And I would advise you to be aware of who you listen to on television.
Amen.
I would advise you to get your Bible and pray and develop your really strong relationship with the Lord so that you know His voice. I know when I walked through that building the other day, John and Leslie and I, my daughter-in-law, and the heaviness, the darkness that seemed to try to engulf. And do you know, I felt that same heaviness this morning. That's why I made the altar call. I felt it here. God wants you. Oh, that word that He spoke. It's an urgent message. It's an urgent message that we realize who we are. Quit letting your brain tell you. Quit letting your brain tell you you cannot resist temptations. That's probably going to be my message tonight, about resisting temptations. But we can do all things through Christ.
Yes.
We just have a will, and we have to choose what we're going to do.
Yes.
And you can't blame it on your mama, your papa, your grandma, your grandpa, your kids. You cannot blame your problems on anybody but yourself.
Amen.
And if you fall to temptation, you can't blame your friends for tempting you with whatever it is they're tempting you with. Well, praise the Lord, that one's free. This one, no, this one's free too, I tell you.